Now back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show, which is presented to you by Power Planter Earth Augers, the official digging tool to find the right size for your digging project. Visit powerplanter.com. Now here are your hosts, Joey and Holly Baird.
Welcome back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show. Holly, let's go to the hotline and bring in our guest for this week.
Yeah, Susannah Shmurak is a freelance health and environmental author and author of Everything Elderberry, How to Forage, Cultivate, and Cook with Amazing Natural Remedy, which was recently released on her website, healthygreensavvy.com. She has a lot of great info for affordable, green, and healthy living. Welcome to the program, Susannah.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, we are excited to have you because we've heard, your book is Everything Elderberry, and it's all about elderberry. Why is these little berries so good for people? Everybody, we see this on Facebook, we see this on social media. Oh, elderberry this, elderberry that. What's so wonderful about this?
Okay, well, there are a couple reasons. The first is that they are an especially rich source of antioxidants that have made so many dark berries a focus of medical inquiry lately. They have positive impacts on long-term health, like protecting your brain, your circulatory system, lowering your risk of cancer. But the primary reason everyone's talking about them is the numerous studies that continue to come out suggesting they're different ways of fighting viruses. They have extremely strong antiviral properties. In human trials, they've reduced the duration and severity of cold and flu. They seem in test tube experiments to interfere with the ability of a virus to penetrate cells and to replicate. And in addition, they help stimulate our immune system. So they're working in multiple different ways to promote health. So they're pretty astonishingly good at what they do.
Now, for people who have heard the term or elderberry, is this something that is naturally coming up in the wild? Is this something you cultivate in your garden? And is it easily identifiable, or do you really have to be careful of what if you think it is or you think it's not?
That's a great question. So the berries growing in this country are native wild elderberries called Sambucus canadensis. They're different than the ones that you generally buy online, which are from Europe. That variety is Sambucus nigra. The ones that people are growing in their gardens are basically wild plants that someone has propagated. So they're plants that somebody's found that are producing really well or have extra flavorful fruit, and you'll find those as named cultivars at different nurseries. So you'll find them growing all over North America and South America, for that matter, though they're slightly different subspecies. They're quite identifiable, but there are lookalikes. If you're a novice forager, you don't want to just go picking something because it has a purple berry. There are other purple berries out there that are not so good for you. I actually have a post dedicated to this on my site that goes over the different lookalikes you want to watch out for. So if you're an experienced forager and you can use all the identifying features, you're looking at the leaves, the bark, the growth habit, as well as the berries and the flowers, then they're not too difficult to identify. But I've been out with people who don't forage at all, and they say, "There's a purple berry. Can I eat it?" I'm like, no, you can't if we don't know what that is. So yes and no. It is dangerous to eat things you can't identify. It's also important to know what you're doing with elderberries. The unripe berries can give people stomach aches. You don't want to eat the leaves and stems, which have high concentrations of compounds that can also make you quite ill.
Wow. Well, so most people know about elderberry syrup. I'm sure they've seen, I've seen it at random places being sold. Yeah, so most people are aware of it. Aside from elderberry syrup, what are some edibles that you have listed in your book, perhaps, that you could use that are beneficial?
Absolutely. Well, there are so many different options besides elderberry syrup. That's the most readily available form. However, medicinally, you have lots of different options, how you use the elderberries. If you have ever made a tincture, alcohol extracts certain compounds. You can also steep them in vinegar or glycerin. You're going to extract different compounds. If you make a strong tea with it, that's another way to use it. And then they're just a really delicious add-in to things like fruit desserts or cocktails. I made a lot of frozen treats like popsicle and sorbet. There's ice cream, soda. Elderberry wine is kind of dual purpose. It was a very old-timey way to enjoy elderberries and also get medicinal benefits from it. People used it pretty commonly to treat colds and also arthritis. And we haven't even mentioned the flowers, which come about 6 weeks before the berries. And it was something that I didn't realize getting started on this project, how incredibly useful medicinally and incredible tasting they are. You can make a syrup from the flowers as well. That is a really popular add-in for confections of various sorts, like cakes, and also wonderful in all kinds of drinks, both alcoholic and non.
Now, with elderberries, are these a perennial? Are these an annual? How is the growth pattern on these particular plants?
It's a perennial. It's a perennial shrub, the kind that grows here. In the western United States, there's a different subspecies, Cerulean, that has a more tree-like form. The elderberry in Europe also has a more tree-like form, but they're definitely perennial plants. They're reasonably long-lived. They're tough. They do well in poor soils. They're great garden plants for places you can't grow much else.
That's very interesting. Now, aside from ingesting the elderberry, what are some other ways they are helpful to our bodies?
Well, one of the things I learned in doing the historical research is that from time immemorial, it seems, people have been using all kinds of parts of the plant. So the roots, the bark, the leaves have all been used medicinally as well. The ways that people tend to use them now are externally. So elderflowers are wonderful for skin, especially for healing and for treating older skin. There's an elderflower farmer I spoke to in Oklahoma who makes elderflower soaps and salves, and he's got, as he describes, these hardworking farmers' hands. And after they started their elderflower business, and he had to be processing elderflower so often, he said his hands started to look, he said, like those of a ninth floor banker. Because his skin had been so wonderfully soothed by handling these things. They're also antimicrobial. They've been studied for their ability to interfere with pathogens. So they were often used in ointments and eye washes in the days before chemical pharmaceuticals. The leaves were also used in salves for sprains, bruises, and wounds. And army doctors in the Civil War used both the leaves and the flowers to treat the wounded.
Very interesting.
Well, just so everybody knows, we're talking with Susannah Shmurak, and she is the author of Everything Elderberry. So we noticed on your website you listed some other beneficial immune-boosting foods, ones that we might even be growing or anybody is growing or recently harvested. What are some common immune-boosting plant-based?
And what does that mean to people who are not familiar with that term?
That's a great question. So your immune system is a lot more complex than most people realize, and involves lots and lots of different processes that rely on many different nutrients. So we tend to think of vitamin C when we think about supporting our immune system, but it turns out our immune system also really wants all the B vitamins, vitamins A, D, E, magnesium, copper, zinc, selenium, all of these different things that particularly in a standard American diet, it can be hard to get. You have to be kind of intentional about getting variety, particularly lots of fruits and vegetables, or as I found out in the case of vegetarians, making sure that you're getting some of those things that are much easier to get from animal products. So what you have harvested recently from your garden that would be wonderful to help your immune system with this transitional weather we're dealing with right now. Sunflower seeds are one of my go-tos to make sure I'm hitting some of the things that I might not get otherwise. Sweet potatoes and carrots are a great source of vitamin A, broccoli, red peppers, for vitamin C. Your gut health is incredibly important to getting your immune system functioning, and the prebiotics we get from our garden, like leeks and sunchokes, onions, broccoli stems. The microbes in our gut really like that, so that can be really helpful. Some of the other things that you might not get from your garden as much, but that are important, particularly in our northern climates, getting enough vitamin D. That's something where you may have to supplement. And if you're a vegetarian, B12 and iron turn out to be important too. So the immune system is pretty complicated, and the idea of supporting it so it can do its job is very helpful. I really like garlic for fighting off colds too, if you harvested that some this summer as well.
Absolutely. Now, you talk about purslane. Now, purslane, some people consider a weed, and other people have heard the term but don't realize they're pulling it out of their garden because it's a nuisance. With that being said, you talk about that on the website. It grows in most people's gardens with abundance. What are some benefits that purslane can provide for the human body that obviously many of us may not be aware of because we just think it's a weed that's a nuisance?
Right. I love that you noticed that. Purslane in other parts of the world is a treasured vegetable, and it also turns out to be one of the best plant sources of omega-3 out there, and you can get vitamin C and E and beta-carotene and iron, magnesium, and potassium from it as well. It's pretty versatile as a salad vegetable or stir-fries. I tend to throw it in smoothies, but it is abundant, and people just don't realize they have this extra crop going in their garden. It's one of my absolute favorite edible weeds.
Absolutely, yeah. So obviously your book is jam-packed with information. How can people find your book, and how can people find more information about you?
Okay, well, you can come visit my blog, which is Healthy Green Savvy. That's SAVVY.com. Where I share all the super practical shortcuts to healthier, greener living that I can find. I have posts on foraging, gardening, remedies, healthy food, eco-conscious choices, as well as plenty of links to my book on the website. You can find it there. It's available on all the major retailers as well as through local bookshops.
Well, Susannah, we greatly appreciate the information which you provided for us. It just jam-packed full of knowledge that many of us may not be aware of exist in nature, that the world provides for us without any effort.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I enjoyed speaking with you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for that.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.